This is a bowl of ramen. But so is this, and this, and even this. In Japan alone, there are 24,000 ramen shops with 5,000 just in Tokyo. And every ramen-ya chef has their own take on it with different toppings and soup bases, so it's natural to feel overwhelmed, and I am here today to tell you everything you need to know from ramen history, components, and a recipe so you can recreate the taste of Japan at home. This is Ramen 101.
いただきます。
So a little about ramen history. Ramen was born in 1859 in Japan. It was during the Meiji era where the country was undergoing a lot of changes and was opening up its ports to trade with neighboring nations. Chinese immigrants sold noodles with soup called ramen in Japan's Chinatown, Yokohama. And ever since then, ramen's popularity started growing and different regions started taking their own twists, from balada tonkotsu ramen in Fukuoka, miso ramen in Sapporo, shio in Tokyo, and etc. Almost to post-war Japan, bread and wheat consumption increased, with wheat being made into ramen noodles. By 1950, ramen noodles were increasingly being eaten at outdoor street stalls known as yatai that started to spring up across towns and cities, offering workers a quick hot meal at all hours of the day and night. In 1958, a key milestone for ramen was the invention of instant noodles by Momofuku Ando, the Taiwanese-Japanese founder of Nissin Foods. This allowed anyone to make comfort soul food at home in just a few easy steps. Now let's move on to what constitutes a ramen. There are three essential components in ramen: the soup, the noodles, and the toppings. And the most important of all is soup. If I'm soup, he's umami. I can't exist without you, baby. Umami is the satisfying taste of protein from amino acid. Amino acids exist in many of our favorite foods like tomatoes, Parmesan cheese, mushrooms, and even in Flamin' Hot Cheetos. But think of umami as the Powerpuff Girls. It's composed of 3 amino acids. Think of buttercup as inosinic, blossom as glutamic, and bubbles as guanylic. Depending on the different type of amino acid ratio, you'll achieve a different umami taste in the broth. Glutamic acid coming from kelp, vegetables, or fermented food, inosinic acid from fish and meat, and guanylic acid from shiitake mushrooms. The correct ratio of these amino acids will yield you that umami flavor that gets bolder exponentially when you combine them versus using only one type of umami. And the ramen soup consists of 3 components: the broth, dashi, the sauce, tare, and the seasoning oil called komiyu. Broth. Dashi is made up of water and a combination of pork bone, beef bone, chicken bone, bonito, kombu mushroom, or scallops, and the umami element is very important. There are 4 main ramen soup bases, and the list is from thinnest to thickest in soup viscosity. Shio is the lightest, which is the salt flavor, shoyu, soy sauce, tonkotsu, simmered pork bone, and miso, fermented bean paste. And my personal favorite is shio for its clean flavor. The tare. The purpose of the tare is to give the soup its salty taste. There are many types of tare: soy sauce, salt, miso, and the chefs choose tare based on the broth they're making. For example, if the broth is a light one, you pick a salt tare to match the plain and simple style of the broth. But if the broth is thick, you use a thicker sauce like miso or soy in order to create a thick and creamy soup base. The komiyu, the seasoning oil that gives ramen its flavor and aroma. Using komiyu keeps the ramen hot because it covers the surface of the soup, trapping the heat inside. Noodles. Ramen noodles are yellow, slippery, springy, a little chewy, but with a little bit of bite. And the answer to why these noodles react this way is because of kansui. Kansui is an alkaline solution, usually sodium carbonate or potassium carbonate, and it gives the noodles its distinct characteristics. And whether the noodles are made by hand or machine, the noodle texture and thickness is chosen based on the cohesiveness of the broth. Toppings. The king of all toppings is definitely chashu. Chashu is a thinly sliced piece of braised pork. It can look like this, or this, or this. And if chashu is king, the queen of the ramen bowl is definitely ajitama. And ajitama is a marinated ramen egg. The yolk should not be overcooked, but not too runny so it doesn't impede with the broth. Menma is fermented bamboo shoots. Shiranegi is the white part of the leek that's thinly sliced. Aonegi is the green part of the green onions. And the toppings are endless and you can really customize to whatever you like and what is in season. And that's pretty much it. Enough talking, now let's start cooking.
The version that we'll be making today is one that's inspired by the Michelin-starred ramen-ya shop Ginza Hachigo. What's really special about them is that the chef uses a French-style technique called consommé to make the ramen broth. And I'm gonna try and recreate it so that you can get a Michelin-starred ramen-ish recipe at home. Not as much as you'd think, huh? It's not about the size of the boat, it's about how you rock it. Cut the tail off and then release the skin. And why are we doing this? All of this is to prevent the broth from emulsifying. You know my name, Big D, Doobydobap. You cheat on me? You're dead, Kevin. You need to treat broth like a first date. The first 30 minutes determines everything. This is gonna go overnight, so I'm just gonna top it off with more water so that it doesn't run out. Oyasumi nasai.
Good morning. Stock is looking very nice. It's really reduced down a lot. Looks so beautiful. Clear, golden, beautiful. A little bit of fat floating to the top, but it's not cloudy.
And we're gonna reduce this bad boy by 2/3 to get even more concentrated chicken flavors. This is gonna be really good. Essentially, it's like a cold brew, but for broth. And cold soaking it, it really captures that aroma much better than boiling it, for example. So if you have the time, this is great, but if you don't, then it's fine. Who dis? Cold soaked dashi. Look at how fat everything got.
Juicy boy.
Let's blend this up. Pick up the hurricane gut. Pick up the hurricane gut. 100 grams of salt goes in. Kombu, shiitake, katsuobushi, all those amino acid rich components are incorporated into this sauce. The solids and the liquids are going to separate once frozen. And we're just going to use the bottom part, which is going to be our shiotare. Is going in the freezer overnight. And I'll show you how we clarify it tomorrow. It needs to finish dripping off, but this is more than enough for our sauce. This is golden. It tastes like soy sauce, but much richer in seafood flavor. And this is our natural MSG. You can really use this instead of soy sauce even. If you're making sauces that are lighter in color, but you want that soy sauce flavor, this is it. This is it, kiddos. And I just chopped this up to help release the fat better. A little bit of water and oil. And you add the water to allow the chicken to completely render out the fat without burning. We're gonna let it evaporate. This is just the chicken fat rendering. I'm gonna let it sit. This is gonna be really, really good komiyu, the seasoning oil for the ramen. And this relish, don't throw it out. I love using it for dumplings. It's so good. Super aromatic, full of umami, and the garlic and the leek is just punching through. God, this is really, really nice. This is completely dried. I'm gonna add in some salt, blitz it, and we are going to have some chicken skin salt to put on top of our chashu. Oh, it's gonna be so good. So excited. Another very important step to making ramen is get so exhausted that you order pizza as an intermission.
Oh, yeah. Did the same thing for that MS readathon at your school, Morty. He didn't read.
What we're doing is creating an alkaline solution. We have our sodium carbonate and we're going to dissolve it in water along with some salt, mixing it slowly into the dry mix, hydrating it slowly. And this dough is going to be much drier than most of the noodles you've probably worked with before, but trust the process. It's not going to be cohesive and that's okay. I'm here to be your emotional support guide. So at this point, we want to transfer this into a Ziploc bag. And you want to make sure all the air gets out. And we let this rest for 30 minutes. I'm going to step on it like you want to be. And you can see the dough hydrating slowly. The corners, not so much. So I'm going to fold it on top of itself to really re-strengthen the gluten structure. Big boy portions. And I'm just gonna let this rest in the fridge and dry out a little bit.
Now it's time for the king of ramen toppings, chashu. I'm Kevin. I like to touch my meat. The reason why we browned it is because it has more flavor, but it also helps retain the moisture inside the pork belly really well. It kind of acts as like a barrier to be like, no, you're not getting out of here. And now we want the internal temperature of this meat to be 60 degrees. And we can achieve that by using this very simple method. Voila! Really just means no air and you don't need a fancy machine to do it. It's just understanding technique.
I have a loaf tin right here. Put this in.
I'm gonna cover it with water and put something heavy so that this gets submerged in. And we're ready to roll. So we want to cool it down and gently bring it up temperature before we serve the ramen. So this is going in the fridge overnight to sleep.
Wow. This sauce I'm gonna keep for later. Slice this bad boy. Moment of truth. Oh, yeah, baby. Look at that. Beautiful. This helps centralize the yolk so that it's not tilting to one side. Just for the first 3 minutes. I'm gonna get an ice bath ready. Every egg has a pretty side and an ugly side, just like you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is everything we need to assemble a ramen bowl. We have our soup here. We have our alkaline noodles. We have the king of toppings, chashu, pork belly, ajitama, which is our soft-boiled eggs, our menma, our pickled bamboo shoots, aonegi, our green onion leek tops sliced thinly, chicken salt to garnish the chashu with crispy chicken skin and salt. Ramen! Assemble. Once the water starts boiling, the chashu
is going into the oven for a quick reheat. It's at 150 degrees just to heat it up. When the water is piping boiling, we're going to boil our noodles. And while the noodles are boiling, I'm gonna quickly heat up the bowl. Good. And let's season the broth. Our shiotare, 2 tablespoons. Broth. Beautiful. Noodles are ready to come out. Give it some air to cool it down. Gently drop the ramen noodles into the broth. Itadakimasu! She's gorgeous, isn't she? The clear broth, the menma, the slightly pink chashu, and the bouncy egg and aonegi in the center. Ah, I'm getting emotional. First things first, the broth. It's so savory and umami rich. The noodles are so bouncy and chewy, and they have this like perfect slurpability factor. It's just kind of like, and it feels so nice, so bouncy, very different from pasta. Menma is perfectly pickled. It's time for the king of toppings, chashu. Look at this. It's buttery, it just melts in your mouth. So soft and tender, but they still have a nice bite. So ooey and gooey. A little bit of menma. Because everything else in this ramen is very lightly salted, having a soft-boiled egg not coated in soy sauce is actually really nice. It complements with like some of the milder flavors of the ramen. I hope this video was helpful, especially for people who are big lovers of ramen like me, or if you're visiting Japan, or if you just want to learn more about cooking. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.